Rain hammered against the glass walls of the penthouse like the world itself was mourning something it couldn't name. Inside, silence reigned, cold, heavy, and unbroken. A little girl sat by the window, knees pulled to her chest, her tiny fingers tracing raindrops down the glass. She didn't cry. She never did. She hadn't spoken a single word in over 3 years. Her name was Emily Sinclair. The only daughter of Alexander Sinclair, a man whose name ruled empires but whose heart was buried beneath his success. Alexander had everything, wealth, power, respect, but none of it could buy back the sound of his daughter's laughter. 3 years ago, Emily's mother, Claire, had died in a tragic car crash. Emily was in the back seat that day. She survived physically, but something inside her shattered so deeply that even time refused to mend it. The doctors called it trauma-induced mutism. The father called it punishment, from God, from fate, or perhaps from himself. Yet every morning, he still tried. He would kneel before her, show her toys, tell her stories, even whisper, "Good morning, princess," hoping for a single sound. But Emily would just stare, her wide blue eyes blank, like she was trapped behind invisible glass. And so, their mansion became a graveyard of unspoken words. Backhand index pointing right before we continue this emotional journey, if you believe in kindness, healing, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Because sometimes, a single act of kindness can bring someone back to life. Alexander's world revolved around 2 extremes, his boardroom and his daughter's silence. At work, he was known as the Iron CEO, a man who never hesitated, never smiled, never faltered. At home, he was a ghost of a father. Trying, failing, and breaking a little more each day. He hired the best therapists money could find. Each one promised progress, but every session ended the same way, with Emily staring blankly while another professional quietly packed their things, muttering words like non-responsive and hopeless case. Until one rainy afternoon, when fate introduced a stranger into their lives. Her name was Lily Carter. 27 years old, modest, soft-spoken, and unlike anyone who had ever walked into the Sinclair mansion. She wasn't a therapist or a doctor, just a simple woman who'd applied for a housekeeping position after losing her job at a small-town daycare. The agency sent her by mistake, someone else was meant to be interviewed. But when Alexander looked at her, standing nervously in the grand hallway with her worn shoes and hopeful eyes, something in her simplicity disarmed him. Against his usual judgment, he said, "You're hired." At first, Lily was invisible. The staff whispered about her, how she smiled too much, how she talked softly to the flowers in the garden, how she left little drawings on the kitchen board with notes that read, "Have a sunny day." But Emily noticed. From her corner by the window, she would watch Lily hum while folding laundry or whisper, "Good morning," to no one in particular. One day, Lily entered the living room where Emily sat with her sketchbook. The little girl's drawings were dark, rain, shadows, broken lines that had no meaning but carried pain. Lily didn't speak, she just sat beside her quietly. After a moment, she took a pencil and began drawing too, a small sun peeking out from the edge of a cloud. Then, she slid the paper next to Emily's sketch. She didn't look at the girl, didn't say a word, just smiled softly and walked away. It was the first time in 3 years that Emily's hand moved to draw something other than sadness. Days turned into weeks. Lily began to gently weave her warmth into the house's silence. She'd play soft music while cooking, leaving the door open so Emily could hear faint notes of laughter from the kitchen. She'd scatter bread crumbs in the garden to feed the sparrows, and sometimes she'd leave a note beside Emily's breakfast plate that read, "Good morning, sunshine," with a little heart drawn next to it. The other staff thought she was wasting her time. But Lily wasn't trying to fix Emily, she was simply making space for her to feel again. One afternoon, Lily found Emily sitting near the piano. The same piano Claire once played before she died. Dust covered the keys. Lily sat down, gently pressed a few notes, and began to play. Her tune wasn't perfect, but it was filled with warmth, a melody that spoke of hope. Emily watched from the corner, her small fingers twitching slightly as if remembering something. Lily smiled and said softly, "It's okay if you don't remember how to play yet. I'll play for both of us." The next morning, Lily returned to find a single rose placed on the piano keys. No one saw Emily do it, but everyone knew it was her. For the first time, Alexander felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years, hope. He watched quietly as Lily's presence transformed his daughter. Emily began spending more time near her, watching her bake cookies, sitting near her when she read stories to the younger staff children, and even allowing Lily to braid her hair one evening. She still didn't speak, but her silence was no longer empty. It was healing. One night, Alexander found Lily in the garden after dinner, quietly watering the flowers. The moonlight glowed on her face as she hummed softly. He thanked her awkwardly, his voice gruff and uncertain. Lily just smiled and said, "You don't have to thank me, sir. She's just learning to feel again. Sometimes love doesn't need words." That night, Alexander sat by Emily's bed and whispered, "Mom would have liked her, you know." For the first time in years, he thought he saw Emily's lips twitch. Not a word, not even a whisper, but the shadow of a smile. The days grew lighter. Emily began drawing colorful pictures, of gardens, of birds, of a woman with long brown hair playing piano beside a smiling girl. When Lily saw the drawing, tears filled her eyes. She knew what it meant. But fate, as always, wasn't done testing them. One afternoon, while driving back from the city, Lily's car was struck by a speeding truck on the same road where Claire's accident had occurred. She was rushed to the hospital, unconscious and critical. When Alexander received the call, the world around him blurred. He rushed Emily to the hospital, but when they arrived, she froze. The smell of antiseptic, the beeping machines, it all triggered her memories. Her breathing grew rapid, tears streaming down her face as she clung to her father's sleeve. Alexander dropped to his knees, holding her trembling hands, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here." But this time, it was Emily who looked into his eyes, her face pale, her lips quivering. And then, for the first time in 3 years, she spoke. "Don't let her die." The words were soft, broken, but they shattered the silence that had imprisoned her soul. Doctors and nurses turned, stunned. Alexander froze, his heart breaking open. He hugged her tightly, tears falling freely. "She won't, baby. She won't. I promise." For days, they waited outside the ICU. Emily refused to leave, sleeping in a chair with her head on her father's shoulder. Alexander realized how much this stranger had changed everything, not just for Emily, but for him too. She had brought light back into a home that had forgotten what warmth felt like. When Lily finally opened her eyes, weak but smiling, Emily was the first to see her. The little girl ran forward, her voice trembling as she whispered, "You came back." Lily's eyes filled with tears. She reached out a hand, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face, whispering back, "I told you. I'd play for both of us." From that day on, Emily never stopped speaking. Her voice was soft, fragile, but alive. The mansion that once echoed with silence now filled with laughter and piano melodies again. Alexander began joining them, sometimes reading bedtime stories, sometimes sitting quietly beside the two of them, feeling the peace he'd long forgotten. He realized that sometimes, the person who heals you isn't the one with all the answers, but the one who simply refuses to give up on you. Months later, as spring painted the gardens in color again, Alexander hosted a charity event at the Sinclair estate. He stood on stage, addressing the crowd with Emily beside him, her small hand holding his tightly. In front of hundreds of guests, he said, "This is my daughter, Emily. She didn't speak for 3 years. I thought I'd lost her forever. Until someone came into our lives and reminded us that love, simple, human love, can rebuild what even tragedy tries to destroy. The crowd applauded, but Emily wasn't watching them. She was watching Lily, standing quietly in the corner, tears streaming down her cheeks as she smiled. Later that night, Emily climbed onto the piano bench, patting the seat beside her. Lily sat down, and together, they played the same melody that had once healed a broken girl. Alexander listened from the doorway, his chest heavy with gratitude. He whispered, "Thank you," though neither of them heard it over the music. Time moved on. The garden bloomed brighter than ever, laughter filled every hallway, and Emily's voice became the sweetest sound Alexander had ever known. Sometimes she still fell silent, but it was no longer out of pain, it was peace. She had found her way back, not through therapy or medicine, but through kindness. A stranger's kindness that had taught her to feel again. And every time Alexander saw Lily sitting by the piano, smiling as Emily played, he realized something simple but profound, that money could buy everything but healing. Healing only came from love, patience, and a heart brave enough to care. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your small act of kindness helps us share more stories of hope and healing with the world. Speech balloon. Before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe one person's kindness can truly change a life? Because sometimes, all it takes is a stranger to teach someone how to feel again.